Hey there folks, let's settle in for the night. We begin an immersive journey back in time. We're going to explore the California Gold Rush, but we're not here for the romantic myths you might have learned in school. There will be no triumphant stories of lucky prospectors striking it rich overnight. The truth was something very different. This isn't a story about incredible fortune, it's about the brutal reality of what happens when the world rushes in. We will focus on the quiet, often overlooked details of daily life for the ordinary people caught in this monumental shift. As always, I love to see where you're all watching from. Feel free to leave a comment with your city or your country. It's always so nice to know we're all settling down for the night together from different corners of the world. And a quick, quiet thought before we begin. If this managed to help you fall asleep, please consider leaving a like and subscribing when you return. It's a silent way of letting us know we're on the right track and helps others find our corner of history. So now, find your comfortable spot. Perhaps you can dim the lights a little bit. Adjust your pillows and your blankets. Let the sound of my voice just be a gentle background hum as we get started. Don't worry about remembering dates or names. Just let the story wash over you. Our story begins in the vast, quiet landscape of Alta California in early 1848, a day when an entire territory found itself adrift between two nations, and a new, uncertain reality was born for all who called it home. The air is dry and warm on your skin. You can smell the dust, the scent of wild sage, and the dry grass that covers the rolling hills. The sky above you is a vast, uninterrupted blue. The silence is the most noticeable thing. It's a deep, profound quiet, broken only by the buzz of an insect or the distant lowing of cattle. This is Alta California, a remote and sparsely populated territory. The world feels slow here. It feels ancient. According to historians, at this moment there are only about 14,000 non-native residents in this entire enormous landscape. It's a place of immense distances and very few people. The dominant culture belongs to the Californios. These are families of Spanish or Mexican descent who own vast tracts of land called ranchos. Imagine you are watching one of them now. You see a lone rider on the horizon, his silhouette dark against the golden hills. He is a vaquero, a skilled horseman checking on his family's thousands of cattle. His life isn't governed by clocks or calendars, but by the seasons. His world is one of leather, dust, and kinship. For your dinner, you might eat beef that was roasted simply over a fire, with tortillas made from ground corn. The conversation around you is in low, unhurried Spanish. Life is pastoral, and while not always easy, it has a predictable rhythm. But here's the thing, this land is not empty. Far from it. You walk away from the rancho into the oak woodlands and along the cool, clear rivers. The air changes. You can smell the gentle smoke of a cooking fire. You hear the soft murmur of a language that has been spoken here for thousands of years. Evidence suggests a population of around 150 native Californians lived here in early 1848. You see a village of the Miwok or Nisenan people. You feel the texture of a finely woven basket in your hands, tight and waterproof, perfect for processing acorns. You see people who have managed this land for generations. They have established communities, complex trade routes, and a deep understanding of the world around them. This is not a wilderness waiting to be discovered, it is a home. For these 150,000 people, their world is about to be fractured beyond recognition. Now, as you stand between these two worlds, the California rancho and the native village, you can feel a strange tension in the air. It's a feeling of being unmoored, of uncertainty. This is because California is in a political vacuum. The Mexican-American War has just ended. Mexico has effectively lost control of this territory, but the United States has not yet established a formal government. There are no US laws here yet. There are no courts, no sheriffs, no formal authority to speak of. It is a land without a master, adrift in the time between two nations. People are just waiting, though most are not sure what they are waiting for. History was holding its breath. Welcome to January 24th, 1848. You are James Marshall. The morning air is cold and damp, carrying the chill of the American river. You pull your rough wool coat a little tighter. As a carpenter and foreman for John Sutter, your job this morning is simple. You have to inspect the tail race your work crew just finished digging for a new sawmill. It's a ditch designed to channel water away from the water wheel. You walk along its muddy bank, the sound of rushing water filling the quiet dawn. You can smell the sharp, clean scent of freshly cut pine from the mill. This is just another Tuesday, a routine inspection. As you stare into the swirling water, your eyes catch something, a flicker of light in the murky depths. It's not the dull shimmer of pyrite, fool's gold, which you've seen before. This is different. You wade into the knee-deep, icy water. Your boots sink into the soft mud. You reach down, your fingers numb from the cold, and scoop up a few small, gleaming flakes. They feel surprisingly heavy in your palm. Back on the bank, you place one of the larger pieces, about the size of a pea, on a flat rock. You bring another stone down upon it. There is no shatter, no crack. The metal simply flattens, soft and malleable. In this quiet moment, with no one else around, a slow burning realization begins in your mind. This is real. It is gold. Now, you are on your horse. The 45-mile ride to Sutter's Fort feels dreamlike. The rhythmic thud of hooves on the dirt path is the only sound. The cool wind rushes past your face, but you barely feel it. Your mind is consumed by the small, heavy secret tucked away in your pouch. When you finally arrive and show John Sutter what you found, you don't see the joy you might have expected. You see fear. Sutter's dream was not of gold. His vision was for a vast agricultural empire named New Helvetia. He dreamed of fields of wheat, herds of cattle, and quiet, orderly settlements. He understood immediately that this soft, yellow metal was a threat. It was a siren call that would bring a flood of chaotic, uncontrollable people to his doorstep, ruining everything he had worked to build. And in the end, he was right. The rush would overrun his lands and drive him to bankruptcy by 1852. And so, the first reaction to the discovery of gold was not a shout but a whisper. Sutter's desperation was palpable. For the next 6 weeks, he tried to contain the news. Imagine you're one of the workers at the mill during this time. You are sworn to secrecy. There are urgent, hushed conversations. There are knowing glances exchanged over campfires. The air is thick with a secret that feels too monumental to be contained by mere promises. The truth was, a discovery this large has its own energy. It wants to be free. Somehow, they managed to keep it quiet for a short while. But the men working for Sutter were not silent in their private lives. 2 workers from the Mormon battalion, Henry Bigler and Azariah Smith, were methodical diarists. In their journals, they calmly noted the discovery. On February 27th, Bigler wrote, "This day, some of the boys found some gold." It was a simple statement of fact, recorded without fanfare. The secret began to seep out through these small, quiet channels. A teamster delivering supplies would mention it in another town. A child of one of the workers might let it slip. The secret was failing, slowly bleeding out into the sparse settlements of Northern California. Now, let's turn our attention to a man named Sam Brannan. He was a shrewd publisher and store owner in the small, sleepy port town of San Francisco. As the rumors trickled in from the interior, you can imagine him in his dusty general store, surrounded by the smell of canvas and leather. He did not grab a pickaxe and rush to the hills. He did something far more clever. He took all the money he had and quietly traveled around the region. He bought every shovel, pick, tin pan, and bag of flour he could find. He created a monopoly before there was even a market. In the middle of May 1848, Brannan decided it was time. You are walking through the muddy streets of San Francisco. You smell the salt from the bay. Suddenly, you hear a man shouting. You see Sam Brannan running through the plaza. He is not whispering, he is performing. He holds a glass bottle filled with gold dust high in the air for all to see. He bellows, "Gold, gold, gold from the American River." The effect was electric. The small town of maybe 900 people emptied almost overnight. Men abandoned their jobs. Sailors deserted their ships, leaving them to rot in the harbor. The town became a ghost town. And where did every single one of those aspiring miners have to go for supplies? To Sam Brannan's store. A simple tin pan he bought for 20 cents, he now sold to you for $15. This wasn't a public service announcement. It was perhaps one of the most brilliant and cynical marketing campaigns in history. For the rest of the country, this was all still just a fantastic rumor, a wild story from a remote, newly acquired territory. And here is the incredible timing that history sometimes delivers. Just 9 days after Marshall's discovery, on February 2nd, 1848, officials in Mexico City had signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, formally handing California to the United States. The men signing the treaty had no idea what lay sleeping in that riverbed. But now the secret was out, and it was racing east. Welcome to Washington, D.C. It is late 1848. The rumor has finally reached the capital, carried by letters and military dispatches. Colonel Richard Mason, the military governor of California, had conducted his own investigation. He sent a detailed official report back to Washington, confirming the widespread discoveries, and with that report, he sent physical proof. On December 5, 1848, you are President James K. Polk. You are preparing to give your State of the Union address to Congress. On your desk is a small wooden box. It's an ordinary tea caddy, but inside it holds 230 ounces of pure California gold. You can smell the faint, lingering scent of tea clinging to the wood. In your address, you formally announce the discovery to the nation and the world. You speak of the extraordinary accounts from Colonel Mason's report. In that moment, everything changed. What was a personal secret, then a local rumor, then a regional frenzy, was now an official, government-verified fact. The spark had now become a global beacon. The quiet, pastoral life of Alta California was over. The world was coming. Now, the news has reached you. It's late 1848 or early 1849, and whether you read it in a newspaper or heard it whispered in a tavern, President Polk's announcement has confirmed the rumors. Gold. It's a word that seems to hum with its own energy, echoing with the promise of untold riches. According to historians, the pull was irresistible, a siren song for the ambitious and the desperate alike. In 1849 alone, around 90,000 people descended on California, abandoning farms, shops, and familiar lives for the uncertain prospect of striking it rich. By 1855, that number would swell to over 300,000, creating an instant, chaotic society on the Pacific coast. This wasn't just an American event. The news rippled across the globe, and the same dream took root in the minds of people in China, Australia, Chile, Mexico, and across Europe, spurring a truly global migration. Imagine that feeling. Your life, with its predictable routines and limited horizons, suddenly has an alternative, a chance, however slim, at a completely different future, free from the drudgery or poverty that has defined your existence. You have made your decision. You are going to California, driven by a powerful combination of hope, desperation, and the intoxicating allure of gold. The question is how. For most, there were three main options, each fraught with immense peril and hardship. None of them were easy, and each demanded a sacrifice of body and spirit. Your choice now is not which path is safe, but which path of suffering you are willing to endure. Perhaps you choose the overland trail. Welcome to the spring of 1849 in a bustling, muddy town like St. Joseph, Missouri, or Independence. This is the jumping-off point, a last bastion of civilization before the vast wilderness. The air smells of livestock, damp earth, the smoke of cook fires, and the axle grease you are rubbing onto the wheels of your new stout wagon. You have meticulously packed it with flour, bacon, coffee, hardtack, and essential tools, carefully calculating what you need to survive for the next 4 to 5 months. Every pound matters. The 2,000-mile journey ahead is a vast, uncertain void, stretching across plains, mountains, and deserts. Your daily routine quickly becomes one of grinding monotony and ceaseless labor. You wake before dawn in the cold, often damp air, shivering as you hitch your oxen and begin walking. You cover 15, maybe 20 miles a day, every step a testament to your resolve. The only sounds are the rhythmic squeak of your wagon wheels, the lowing of cattle, and the endless wind whistling across the prairie. Evenings are spent in makeshift camps, guarding against theft and wild animals, trying to get what little rest you can before another grueling day. But here's the insidious thing. Your greatest danger is not a stampede of buffalo or a hostile encounter with Native American tribes, though both were real, if often exaggerated, fears. It's the water you drink. You dip your cup into a seemingly clear stream, and the water tastes fine, but thousands of other wagons, tens of thousands of animals, and countless people have passed this way before you. The water sources are teeming with invisible threats. The invisible killer along the trail is disease. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, and smallpox move silently and relentlessly from camp to camp, carried by contaminated water and close quarters. You see the chilling evidence in the simple graves that dot the landscape, small piles of stones or a crude wooden cross, hastily erected markers for lost loved ones. The truth was, this journey was so deadly it was often called the nation's longest graveyard. Evidence suggests that as many as 1 in 10 people who started this journey did not live to see California, succumbing to illness, accident, or exhaustion. Through it all, you just keep walking west, driven by the dream. For some, the ordeal was even worse. A group that would become known as the Lost 49ers took a supposed shortcut, a treacherous detour through what they believed would be a quicker passage, and ended up hopelessly trapped in a place they grimly named Death Valley. Imagine the blinding sun beating down, the air shimmering with heat, the taste of dust coating your mouth, and the desperate, soul-crushing thirst that slowly consumes you. Their story became a legend of survival against impossible odds, with 2 men, William Manley and John Rogers, embarking on an epic, desperate walk of 250 miles through the scorching desert to find help. Somehow, against all reason, they managed to return and lead most of their starving, delirious party to safety, a powerful testament to human endurance in the face of absolute despair. Maybe the overland route felt too daunting, too unpredictable, or simply too long to even contemplate. You choose the sea. You find yourself boarding a crowded, often decrepit ship in a bustling port like New York or Boston, filled with hundreds of other eager fortune seekers. The journey ahead of you is nearly 20,000 miles and will take anywhere from 4 to 8 months, a vast expanse of ocean. The smell of tarred rope and damp wood fills your nostrils, soon to be irrevocably mixed with the inescapable odor of seasickness, unwashed bodies, and stale food. You are crammed below deck with dozens, sometimes hundreds, of other men in a dark, airless, and unsanitary space. The daily reality is one of profound boredom punctuated by moments of extreme fear. You eat the same monotonous food every day, hard biscuits often infested with weevils, and tough, salted beef or pork, barely palatable. Personal hygiene is a luxury, and the lack of fresh air makes the hold a suffocating prison. As you sail south through tropical latitudes and then into the frigid southern seas, your body begins to ache. Your gums feel soft and sore, your teeth loosen. This is the beginning of scurvy, a debilitating lack of vitamin C that was a constant and terrifying threat on these long voyages. Many sailors and passengers perished from it. The most terrifying part of the journey is the perilous passage around Cape Horn, the southern tip of South America. Imagine the violent, relentless lurch of the ship, tossed about like a toy in titanic waves. The sound of hurricane-force winds screaming through the rigging is deafening, and the sight of icy, mountainous waves crashing over the deck can shatter the bravest spirit. Below deck, men are thrown from their bunks, possessions slide wildly, and the constant creaking of the ship's timbers sounds like a death knell. When disease inevitably breaks out in the close, unsanitary quarters below deck, typhus, cholera, or smallpox, there is literally nowhere to go, no escape from the contagion. A man who dies is sewn into his own hammock with a cannonball for weight, his last earthly possession. After a brief, hurried prayer, his body is cast overboard, a simple, unceremonious burial at sea. You watch the small splash, and then there is nothing, just the vast, indifferent ocean, as the ship sails on, carrying its living cargo towards an uncertain future. Or perhaps you choose the Panama shortcut, lured by the promise of speed and a seemingly easier passage. On paper, it sounded so tempting. It could cut the journey down to just a few weeks, avoiding the terrifying ordeal of Cape Horn. You arrive at the Caribbean coast of Panama, likely at Chagres, and your journey across the 60-mile isthmus begins. Welcome to the jungle, a stark contrast to anything you've ever known. The heat is suffocating, a thick, wet blanket you can't escape, pressing down on you relentlessly. The air is alive with the ceaseless buzz of mosquitoes, their high-pitched whine a constant torment. You smell the rich, rotting vegetation all around you, the heavy scent of decay and life intertwined. You travel by crowded canoe up the winding Chagres River, then disembark and continue by mule over muddy, treacherous paths, often through thick, oppressive vegetation. Every step is a struggle against the swampy terrain and the crushing humidity. The truth was, this shortcut was a disease gauntlet, far more deadly than the long sea voyage. The seemingly innocent water of the rivers carries cholera, and the omnipresent mosquitoes carry yellow fever and malaria, diseases that could strike swiftly and lethally. Bandits, often local or desperate gold seekers, frequently hide in the dense jungle, preying on travelers weakened by the journey or carrying their newly acquired riches. If you manage to survive the perilous crossing, you face a new kind of misery on the Pacific side. You arrive in Panama City, a bustling but often squalid port, only to find hundreds, sometimes thousands, of other men just like you, all desperately waiting for a ship to take them the final leg to San Francisco. There are simply not enough ships, and demand far outstrips supply. You could be stranded here for weeks, even months, your money dwindling away rapidly as you pay for lodging in a city rife with sickness and inflated prices. For all its promise of speed, the Panama route was tragically lethal. Historians suggest that for those who took it, as many as 1 in 5 were dead from tropical diseases within 6 months of finally reaching their California dream, if they reached it at all. Regardless of the path you chose, the journey to California was an epic undertaking, a testament to the extraordinary human desire for a better life. It was a gamble against immense odds, a test of endurance, and for many, a one-way trip to a new frontier. The gold may have been the lure, but the true story of the gold rush lies in the incredible hardships endured and the indomitable spirit of those who dared to chase the dream, no matter the cost. Maybe the overland route felt too daunting, too unpredictable, or simply too long to even contemplate. You choose the sea. You find yourself boarding a crowded, often decrepit ship in a bustling port like New York or Boston, filled with hundreds of other eager fortune seekers. The journey ahead of you is nearly 20,000 miles and will take anywhere from 4 to 8 months, a vast expanse of ocean. The smell of tarred rope and damp wood fills your nostrils, soon to be irrevocably mixed with the inescapable odor of seasickness, unwashed bodies, and stale food. You are crammed below deck with dozens, sometimes hundreds, of other men in a dark, airless, and unsanitary space. The daily reality is one of profound boredom punctuated by moments of extreme fear. You eat the same monotonous food every day, hard biscuits often infested with weevils, and tough, salted beef or pork, barely palatable. Personal hygiene is a luxury, and the lack of fresh air makes the hold a suffocating prison. As you sail south through tropical latitudes and then into the frigid southern seas, your body begins to ache. Your gums feel soft and sore, your teeth loosen. This is the beginning of scurvy, a debilitating lack of vitamin C that was a constant and terrifying threat on these long voyages. Many sailors and passengers perished from it. The most terrifying part of the journey is the perilous passage around Cape Horn, the southern tip of South America. Imagine the violent, relentless lurch of the ship, tossed about like a toy in titanic waves. The sound of hurricane-force winds screaming through the rigging is deafening, and the sight of icy, mountainous waves crashing over the deck can shatter the bravest spirit. Below deck, men are thrown from their bunks, possessions slide wildly, and the constant creaking of the ship's timbers sounds like a death knell. When disease inevitably breaks out in the close, unsanitary quarters below deck, typhus, cholera, or smallpox, there is literally nowhere to go, no escape from the contagion. A man who dies is sewn into his own hammock with a cannonball for weight, his last earthly possession. After a brief, hurried prayer, his body is cast overboard, a simple, unceremonious burial at sea. You watch the small splash, and then there is nothing, just the vast, indifferent ocean as the ship sails on, carrying its living cargo towards an uncertain future. Or perhaps you choose the Panama shortcut, lured by the promise of speed and a seemingly easier passage. On paper, it sounded so tempting. It could cut the journey down to just a few weeks, avoiding the terrifying ordeal of Cape Horn. You arrive at the Caribbean coast of Panama, likely at Chagres, and your journey across the 60-mile isthmus begins. Welcome to the jungle, a stark contrast to anything you've ever known. The heat is suffocating, a thick, wet blanket you can't escape, pressing down on you relentlessly. The air is alive with the ceaseless buzz of mosquitoes, their high-pitched whine a constant torment. You smell the rich, rotting vegetation all around you, the heavy scent of decay and life intertwined. You travel by crowded canoe up the winding Chagres River, then disembark and continue by mule over muddy, treacherous paths, often through thick, oppressive vegetation. Every step is a struggle against the swampy terrain and the crushing humidity. The truth was, this shortcut was a disease gauntlet, far more deadly than the long sea voyage. The seemingly innocent water of the rivers carries cholera, and the omnipresent mosquitoes carry yellow fever and malaria, diseases that could strike swiftly and lethally. Bandits, often local or desperate gold seekers, frequently hide in the dense jungle, preying on travelers weakened by the journey or carrying their newly acquired riches. If you manage to survive the perilous crossing, you face a new kind of misery on the Pacific side. You arrive in Panama City, a bustling but often squalid port, only to find hundreds, sometimes thousands, of other men just like you, all desperately waiting for a ship to take them the final leg to San Francisco. There are simply not enough ships, and demand far outstrips supply. You could be stranded here for weeks, even months, your money dwindling away rapidly as you pay for lodging in a city rife with sickness and inflated prices. For all its promise of speed, the Panama route was tragically lethal. Historians suggest that for those who took it, as many as 1 in 5 were dead from tropical diseases within 6 months of finally reaching their California dream, if they reached it at all. Regardless of the path you chose, the journey to California was an epic undertaking, a testament to the extraordinary human desire for a better life. It was a gamble against immense odds, a test of endurance, and for many, a one-way trip to a new frontier. The gold may have been the lure, but the true story of the gold rush lies in the incredible hardships endured and the indomitable spirit of those who dared to chase the dream, no matter the cost. But surviving the journey was only the first trial. Now, you face the diggings themselves. The treacherous voyage, whether around Cape Horn, across the disease-ridden Isthmus of Panama, or through the vast and unforgiving plains, had already culled the weak. Many of your fellow travelers never made it, succumbing to illness, accident, or despair long before glimpsing the Sierra Nevada. But you, against the odds, are here. Welcome to the California goldfields in 1849. But this is not the paradise you imagined. Your first day begins at 4:30 a.m. You wake up not to birdsong, but to the deep, damp cold that has settled in your tent overnight. Your blanket is wet. The air smells of mildew and stale campfire smoke. You pull on stiff, dirty clothes and stumble outside to make breakfast. It's the same meal you'll eat nearly every day: greasy bacon, a scoop of beans, and a hard, dry biscuit, all washed down with bitter, boiling hot coffee. Now, you gather your tools. If you are new and poor, you have only a shovel and a metal pan. These are the tools of the greenhorn, easily acquired but back-breaking to use effectively. If you've been here a bit longer, maybe you've managed to afford a rocker, a heavy wooden cradle that allows you to process more dirt. Even this rudimentary machine cost a fortune and was often built from scavenged lumber. You walk to the river, the morning still dark and grey. The rising sun, if visible through the often smoky air from countless campfires, offers little warmth. You don't hesitate, you step directly into the stream. The shocking cold of the mountain water floods your boots and bites at your legs, quickly numbing them to a painful ache. And then you begin the rhythm of the work. You bend at the waist, you scoop gravel and mud into your pan. You swirl it with water, letting the lighter dirt wash away. You peer intently at the black sand left in the bottom, your eyes straining for a fleck of yellow, a glint of hope. Then you do it again, and again, and again. The monotonous swish, scoop and stare repeats hundreds of times a day. After a few hours, your body begins to send signals of protest. A deep, burning ache settles into your lower back from the constant bending. Your fingers, submerged in the freezing water for hours, go numb and waxy white, often cracking and bleeding. You barely feel it when you catch a fingernail on a sharp rock, tearing it away, a common injury that often festers. The repetitive motion of shoveling gravel into a rocker box sends a shooting pain through your shoulder, a constant throb that never truly fades. You do this for 12, sometimes 16 hours a day, driven by the desperate hope of a strike. The sun beats down on your neck in the summer, blistering your skin, and in the winter you work through chilling rain and even snow, your teeth chattering, your hands frozen. The truth was, this wasn't a treasure hunt. It was relentless, punishing manual labor that wore men down to the bone, transforming hopeful adventurers into gaunt, desperate figures. What they found was that the method of mining had to evolve. At first, your simple pan is your only tool, yielding perhaps a few dollars worth of dust on a good day, but more often nothing. You might wash 50 pans in a brutal 12-hour day. Soon you realize it's more efficient to team up. You and a partner build or buy a rocker box, and now you can process 3 times as much dirt, though it still requires immense physical effort. Then, you see larger groups of men building long toms, which are essentially massive wooden sluices 10 to 20 feet long. A constant stream of water is diverted from the river to run through the trough, washing dirt over a series of barriers or riffles that might trap the heavy gold. Each step requires more men, more money, and more complex organization, pushing individual miners further into cooperative ventures or out of the game entirely. But here's the thing. The gold you and your partners can reach with these methods is the easy gold. It's the dust and flakes sitting in the riverbeds, eroded from ancient sources. The real treasure, the mother lode, is locked away inside the hillsides, deeply embedded in quartz veins. By the mid-1850s, large corporations arrive, bringing an end to the era of the individual prospector. They bring enormous capital and new technology. What you see now is a massive iron cannon, called a hydraulic monitor, shooting a jet of water with such immense force that it liquefies an entire hillside in minutes, sending torrents of mud, gravel, and trees cascading down. The roar is deafening, shaking the very ground beneath your feet. There is no way for you, with your shovel and pan, to compete against such destructive efficiency. Your dream of striking it rich on your own is over. You have become obsolete, your skills and simple tools no match for industrial might. Your only option now is to work for wages for the very companies that pushed you out, transforming from an independent hopeful into just another laborer. At the end of another exhausting day, you return to your home. The mining camps have names like Drunkard's Bar, Hangtown, or Gugai, reflecting the harsh reality of life there. Your home is a flimsy tent, likely made from a piece of sailcloth salvaged from one of the ships abandoned in San Francisco Bay, which now lie rotting in the harbor. You sleep on the hard, damp dirt, covered in a thin, often wet blanket. When it rains, a steady drip of water lands on your face all night, and the ground beneath you turns to mud. There are no sewage systems. Human and animal waste collects openly. The area around the camp is a sanitation nightmare, a breeding ground for disease. The same streams you drink from are fouled with human waste, mercury from the mining process, and the refuse of countless camps upstream. Dysentery, cholera, scurvy, and typhoid fever spread quickly, claiming more lives than all the gold ever found was worth. Medical care is non-existent or prohibitively expensive, leading to excruciating deaths for simple ailments. It is also a profoundly lonely place. According to historians, the population here in 1852 was over 92% male, creating an intensely masculine and often brutal environment. The lack of family, community, and the softening influence of women created a coarse, grim, and often violent society. Disputes over claims, gambling debts, or just pent-up frustration frequently erupted into fights, often ending in serious injury or death, with little justice to be found. Saturday night is your only release. You take your small pouch of gold dust, your meager earnings, to a tent saloon. You spend it on overpriced, watered-down whiskey and high-stakes gambling, a desperate attempt to feel something beyond the daily grind. Fights are common, often spilling out into the muddy street. On Sunday, you don't rest. Instead, you nurse your hangover, mend your torn clothes, and perhaps try to write a letter home. You try to find the words to describe your life, but you carefully omit the worst parts: the constant hunger, the gnawing pain, the isolation, and above all, the despair that settles like the damp cold. You learn about the economy on your first trip to a supply store, if you can even call it that, often just another tent with a few goods. The price shock is dizzying. A breakfast for two that would have cost you $1 back home is listed at $43. In today's money, that's about $1,200. You see a single egg for sale for $3, which is the equivalent of $84 today. A pound of coffee, essential for starting your day, costs $75. A new pair of sturdy boots, vital for working in the streams, will cost you over $100, more than $3,000 in modern currency. The brutal math of your existence quickly becomes clear. After a full day of back-breaking labor, if you're lucky, you might have found $15 worth of gold. That is just enough to pay for 1 or 2 meals, perhaps a drink at the saloon. In the end, you are trapped in a cycle. You work yourself to exhaustion just to earn enough to eat, to avoid starvation, so you have the strength to work yourself to exhaustion again tomorrow. The dream brought you here, but the reality is a relentless, soul-crushing struggle for survival. But beyond the back-breaking labor, a new set of enemies emerges. These are silent, invisible threats that creep through the camps, taking a far greater toll than any mining accident, any claim jumper's bullet. The first enemy comes from within your own body, a slow, insidious decay. You notice a profound weakness in your limbs, a crushing fatigue that no amount of rest seems to alleviate. Your gums feel soft and bleed when you eat your hard biscuit, or even when you simply touch them. One of your teeth feels unnervingly loose, threatening to fall out at any moment. Your skin, once taut and healthy, begins to show strange purplish spots. This, you soon learn from the whispers and groans around you, is scurvy. Your diet in the goldfields, what some called the trinity of beans, bacon and bread, contains almost no vitamin C. Without fresh fruits or vegetables, your body simply begins to break down, its very foundations crumbling. The capillaries beneath your skin rupture, leading to painful hemorrhages. Old wounds, long healed, might reopen. Your joints swell and ache, making every step agony. According to one of the era's physicians, Dr. Thomas Logan, the mining region was filled with what he called scorbutic emigrants, men hobbling around with aching joints and festering sores, their teeth falling out, their minds sometimes clouded by delirium. The truth was, this deficiency was an epidemic, a silent killer often overlooked in the dramatic tales of gold strikes. Historians estimate that as many as 10,000 miners may have died from scurvy in the early years of the gold rush. For those who contracted it severely, the mortality rate was alarmingly high, as much as 30%. Hope, however meager, often hinged on finding a wild onion or a patch of sorrel to chew on, a desperate attempt to ward off the inevitable. Just as you learn to fear the slow, agonizing decay of scurvy, a new terror arrives with the crisp, cooler air of the autumn of 1850. Welcome to the cholera epidemic. This disease is not slow, it offers no lingering demise, it is brutally, terrifyingly fast. A man can be healthy and working in the morning, full of life and plans, and be dead by evening, his body twisted, contorted. Imagine the palpable fear that grips your camp, thicker than the morning fog. You hear the horrifying sounds of violent sickness, uncontrollable vomiting, agonizing diarrhea, coming from a nearby tent, sounds that echo with a chilling finality. The next morning, you see your neighbor's tent silently taken down, his body being wrapped in his own threadbare blanket for a hasty, unmarked burial. The speed of death leaves no time for ceremony, only for grim necessity. You eye the river water with suspicion, though it's your only source of hydration. You wonder if the bitter cup of coffee you just drank, made with that same water, will be your own death sentence. This was known terrifyingly as the blue death, because of the ghastly cyanotic color a victim's skin would turn from severe dehydration, their eyes sunken, their features drawn. The disease devastated California's new cities and camps, places with no sanitation, where human waste mingled freely with water sources. In San Francisco, a bustling hub of new arrivals, cholera was responsible for nearly a third of all deaths during the outbreak. The helplessness was the worst part. There was no effective treatment, no known cure, and no understanding of how it spread beyond the vague idea of bad air or miasma. In his diary, a miner named David Gillis wrote with simple, chilling resignation, 2 more young men died last night of cholera. Both of them had been at work the day before. It was a quiet, terrifying lottery, a roll of the dice in which no one knew whose turn was next to draw the losing ticket. Beyond the invisible enemies of disease, the camps were a place of profound lawlessness. The established legal systems of the East simply hadn't caught up to the explosive population growth and transient nature of the goldfields. There were no police patrols, no formal judges, and no structured court system in most remote areas. When a man was robbed, his claim jumped, or he was otherwise wronged. Justice was often swift, brutal, and whatever the local mob decided it should be. Let's set the scene. A crowd gathers around a large oak tree, its branches already scarred by previous acts of vigilante justice. An angry murmur, a low growl of resentment, ripples through the men. A man stands accused of stealing another miner's precious gold dust, perhaps his entire life's work. There is no formal trial, no defense attorney, just a quick accusation, a few heated arguments, and then a show of hands for a vote. Minutes later, the accused, often given no chance to explain himself, is hanged from a prominent branch, a stark warning to others. According to historians, the level of violence was staggering. There were at least 4,200 violent deaths, including murders and summary executions, in the first 5 years of the gold rush alone. A brave woman named Louise Clapp, writing under the pseudonym Dame Shirley in her famous letters, documented the brutal reality of these makeshift legal proceedings. She wrote chilling descriptions of public whippings and hangings for crimes as simple as petty theft or even perceived disrespect. For you, the miner, this means a constant, low-level fear, a pervasive sense of insecurity. The background noise of your life is punctuated by drunken fighting, angry shouting, the crash of bottles, and the chilling crack of an occasional gunshot in the dead of night. But here's the thing: the most pervasive violence was often the quietest, the one that left no visible scars. The crushing loneliness, the profound isolation from family and community, and the constant despair led to a widespread mental health crisis. One miner, Joseph Warren Wood, wrote of his lonely feelings and his mind being tortured with gloomy thoughts before he eventually succumbed to the darkness and took his own life. His story, sadly, was tragically common, played out in countless solitary tents across the vast goldfields. Your only tangible connection to the life you left behind, to the family and friends who feel like phantoms now, is a simple piece of paper. You wait anxiously for mail day, a rare and eagerly anticipated event, hoping for a letter from home, a lifeline to your past. But the journey is long, impossibly long, stretching across continents and oceans. A letter from your family takes 2 months to reach you, if it ever arrives at all, and your reply takes another 2 months to get back. A round trip of correspondence can take up to 100 days, sometimes more. You ask a question about your mother's failing health, and you will not get an answer for a third of a year. The world you came from feels impossibly distant, almost like a dream, fading with each passing, grinding day. News arrives so slowly that events back home are ancient history by the time you hear of them, and vice versa. This delayed, often interrupted communication only amplified the sense of isolation, making reconnection almost impossible. Through it all, the original hope that drove you here, the intoxicating dream of instant wealth, begins to curdle into a grim, bitter realization. The romantic vision of glittering nuggets and easy fortune dissolves into the mud and sweat of reality. A miner named Sullivan Osborne, whose letters home survived, lamented that he lived and fared like a dog. Another, deeply disillusioned, confessed that his high hopes and bright anticipation have long since perished, replaced by a hollow ache. This was the final, quiet tragedy for so many who flocked to California, the death of the dream itself. It was the moment you looked at your calloused, bleeding hands, your worn-out, mud-caked boots, and the small pouch of gold dust that was barely enough to keep you fed for another week, and you understood the brutal truth. You understood how naive you had been, how thoroughly duped by the tales of easy riches. In the raw, honest words of one disillusioned miner, writing a letter of warning to his brother back east, "How little I knew when I started from home, how green I have been." In the end, for most, the California gold rush was not a story of unimaginable riches found, but of innocence lost, of broken bodies and shattered spirits, a harsh lesson learned in the unforgiving crucible of the American West. Until now, the you, in our story, has mostly been a white American man who chose to come to California. But the gold rush was a global event that pulled in people from every corner of the world and collided with those who were already there. The truth was, for many, the dream of gold was a waking nightmare. To understand what really happened, we have to shift our perspective. Let's step into the world of a Pomo, a Miwok, or a Maidu person living in California in 1848. Your world is ancient, ordered, and intimately connected to the land. You know the salmon runs, the oak groves, and the seasonal rhythms. Now imagine a few years later. The rivers you have relied on for generations now run thick with mud, poisoned by mining runoff. The salmon are gone. The oak forests are clear-cut to build sluices and cabins. Your food sources are destroyed, and armed men are swarming your land. For the native peoples of California, the gold rush was an apocalypse. According to historians, the indigenous population plummeted from around 150 in 1848 to just 30,000 by 1870. This was a loss of 120,000 lives in just over 2 decades. This was not an accidental tragedy. It was a stated goal. California's first governor, Peter Burnett, declared that a 104 of extermination would be waged. The state government authorized millions of dollars to pay militias and offered bounties for the heads or scalps of native people. The 1850 Act for the Government and Protection of Indians legalized a form of slavery, allowing white settlers to take custody of native children. In 2019, California's Governor Gavin Newsom issued a formal apology to Native Americans for what he acknowledged was a genocide. Now, let's shift our perspective once more. Imagine you are in a village in Guangdong province in southern China. You hear stories of a place called Gamsang Gold Mountain. It is a land of opportunity. You cannot afford the passage, so you sign a contract. You travel on what is called a credit ticket, meaning you arrive in California already in deep debt to the brokers who paid your way. The work is hard, but you are diligent. But here's the thing, as soon as you begin to find success, a new law is passed. It is 1850 and you are now subject to the foreign miners' tax. You must pay $20 a month simply for the right to work. In today's money, that is over $500 every single month. This tax was designed to drive you out. You experience constant racism and violence, with other miners jumping your claim, knowing you have no legal recourse. Evidence suggests that over the years, this tax generated more than $5 million, accounting for a quarter of all state revenue. Through it all, you and your fellow Chinese immigrants show incredible resilience. You work together in large groups, reprocessing abandoned claims that others considered worthless and extracting the fine gold they missed. Many of you pivot, opening laundries, restaurants, and shops, providing essential services that the mining camps desperately needed. You find your own gold mountain, not in the rivers, but through sheer perseverance. Let's shift perspective again. You are a Californio. Your family, of Spanish or Mexican descent, has lived here for generations. You own a vast rancho, thousands of acres of grazing land for your cattle. At first, the gold rush is a massive boom for you. You sell your beef to the hungry miners for incredible prices, but then the squatters arrive. Hundreds of American prospectors build shacks on your land, kill your cattle, and refuse to leave. The 1851 Land Act requires you to prove ownership of your ancestral lands in an American court. The process is complex, expensive, and conducted in a language you don't speak. Years are spent in litigation. What they found was a cruel paradox. Even if you won your case, you were often forced to sell your land to pay the crushing legal fees. A generation of wealthy landowners was systematically dispossessed. This rejection of existing expertise extended to other groups. Imagine you are a miner from Sonora, Mexico. You are not an amateur. You grew up in a mining culture and you understand advanced techniques like dry washing, which allows you to find gold far from rivers. But your very success is seen as a threat. You and your fellow Latin American miners are driven from the richest claims by armed mobs of white Americans who resent your skill. You are also targeted by the foreign miners' tax. Most experienced miners from Mexico, Chile, and Peru simply gave up and left California within the first few years, taking their invaluable knowledge with them. Finally, let's adopt one last perspective. You are a woman arriving in a mining camp in 1850. The first thing you notice is that you are one of very few. Women made up only about 8% of the population. This scarcity created a unique set of economic opportunities. You realize you can earn far more money by providing domestic services than by mining. A well-baked pie could sell for $1, a fortune at the time. One woman reportedly made $18,000 from her bakery. You could be someone like Eleanor Dumont, a skilled card dealer known as Madame Moustache, who ran her own successful gambling halls. The 1849 California Constitution also gave women the right to own property independently from their husbands. In the end, it was a woman, the writer Louise Clapp, who provided one of the most enduring and realistic portraits of life in the camps, documenting the complicated humanity of this wild new world. You have been in the California goldfields for a year or two now. The dream that brought you here, of picking up nuggets from the ground, has faded. The stories were true for a moment. In 1848, the first arrivals did find plentiful surface gold, but by the time you and nearly 100,000 others arrived in 1849, those easy deposits were gone. Now, you toil for days just to find a few dollars worth of dust. The goal for a miner was to make a pile, a personal fortune of maybe $10,000, and then go home. The truth was, almost no one achieved this. Consider the men who started it all. James Marshall, the carpenter who first saw the glinting metal, died penniless. If the men at the very heart of the discovery failed to profit, what hope did you have? As one observer, Hinton Helper, noted at the time, it is the sworn testimony of 99 out of 100 that they have been uniformly unsuccessful.
Wow.
You walk into a supply store in Sacramento, your shovel is broken, and your boots are worn through. You feel the grit of failure in your teeth. But the man behind the counter is thriving. The shelves behind him are stocked high with tools, food, and clothing. He weighs your gold dust on his scale, and you watch your hard-earned wealth disappear in exchange for basic necessities. Here's the thing: the surest way to get rich in the gold rush was not to mine for gold, it was to mine the miners. You see this everywhere. It was the business model perfected by Sam Brannan, who became California's first millionaire, not by panning in a river, but by selling every shovel, pan, and bag of flour he could find. His stores sometimes made $5,000 a day. Imagine you keep tearing your flimsy work pants. A merchant named Levi Strauss has an idea. He makes you a pair of durable trousers out of tough canvas meant for tents. Congratulations, you've just helped launch a global empire. Entrepreneurs like Henry Wells and William Fargo started banking and express companies to move and protect the gold. They all understood a simple principle: you were a captive market with guaranteed needs. Food, tools, shelter, and entertainment. These were the real gold mines. You have finally given up on mining. Your back aches, your spirit is low, and your pockets are empty. You leave the dusty, barren foothills and travel west into California's great Central Valley. Here, the air feels different. You smell rich, dark soil. You feel the warm sun not as an enemy burning your neck, but as a source of life. In this moment, you discover California's green gold. Many failed miners like you became fantastically successful farmers. The hundreds of thousands of people who came for gold created a massive demand for food, sparking an agricultural boom that lasts to this day. This had a multiplier effect across the entire economy. The demand for better tools spurred the growth of iron foundries and machine shops. The need for housing created a massive lumber industry. Roads, steamships, and even the Panama Railway were built to move people and goods. In the end, the immense private wealth generated by this new, diversified California economy helped fund one of the most ambitious projects in American history, the Transcontinental Railroad. The rush for gold, ironically, built a thriving economy where gold itself played an increasingly minor role. But here's the thing, there was another multiplier effect, one that is dark and permanent. Let's take you back to the river in the 1860s. The mining is now industrial. You see hydraulic cannons firing jets of water that erase entire hillsides. To separate the fine gold from this muddy slurry, the mining companies used mercury. You can feel the slick, silvery liquid metal and neurotoxin running through the sluice boxes. What they found was that much of this mercury was simply lost, washed away with the tailings. Evidence suggests that over 10 million pounds of mercury were lost to California's environment during the gold rush. The hydraulic mining itself was devastating, moving 1.5 billion cubic yards of earth, enough to bury Washington, D.C. 30 feet deep. This debris choked the rivers, raising the riverbed of the Sacramento River by several feet and causing massive flooding. Now, imagine yourself standing by that same river today. The water might look clear, but the poison of the gold rush is still here. The EPA has signs posted, warning against eating the fish due to mercury contamination. This isn't a problem that has faded with time. Scientists say the mercury will persist for at least 10,000 years, and modern climate change, which causes more extreme flooding, is now washing this old mercury, long trapped in sediment, back into the water system. The few frantic years of the gold rush left a toxic legacy that will outlast every skyscraper, highway and city it helped to build. It is the real and permanent price of gold. In the end, after all the chaos, a new world was born. Let's change the scene. You are a politician in Washington, D.C. in 1850. An urgent issue is on your desk. This remote, lawless, and wildly populated place called California is demanding statehood. It has grown so fast that it will bypass the normal territorial stage entirely. The population of San Francisco alone has exploded from a village of 500 people to a city of 150,000 in just a few short years. The debate is heated, not just about California, but about the balance of power between free and slave states in the nation. On September 9, 1850, as part of a great national bargain called the Compromise of 1850, California is admitted as the 31st state. But this new state was forged in a crucible of violence. With no official laws or police, citizens formed vigilance committees. The truth was, in these early days, the rope and the gun were often more powerful organizing principles than the law. This foundation of chaotic, violent self-governance would leave a permanent mark on the character of the new state. Now, let's go back to the river one last time. You are standing by its banks today, over 170 years after the rush. The water might look clear, but you carry with you the knowledge of its past. This is your toxic inheritance. The salmon that once filled these rivers in the millions are gone, their spawning grounds buried forever under tons of mining debris. You can still see the landscape scars, vast man-made canyons carved by hydraulic monitors a century ago. The destruction became so severe that farmers, whose lands were being buried downstream, sued the powerful mining corporations. This led to the Sawyer decision of 1884, a landmark environmental ruling that finally banned hydraulic mining. But the damage was done. Modern scientific studies confirm that the mercury used to process gold still contaminates the fish and wildlife. A full cleanup is considered functionally impossible, with costs estimated in the billions and a timeline measured in centuries. The rush for gold lasted only a few years, but its consequences will last for millennia. As we look back, you can see a social template taking shape. The DNA of modern California, and in some ways the modern world, was written during these few chaotic years. You can see the emergence of a boom-bust culture, a cycle of frantic investment and speculation followed by a painful crash. You see the birth of an entrepreneurial mythology where the success of a few individuals is celebrated while the immense collective and environmental cost is quietly ignored. A clear racial hierarchy was established and enforced with violence and discriminatory laws. And yet, paradoxically, the lawless nature of the society and the extreme gender imbalance created new and unexpected economic opportunities for women. But here's the thing, all of this was built on a foundational belief in environmental sacrifice. The idea that progress and profit are worth the permanent destruction of the natural world. This became the blueprint. Let's see this blueprint play out again. It is the late 1990s, a new rush is on in California. The promise is not yellow gold, but digital gold. You hear people buzzing about IPOs, stock options, and a new thing called the internet. Welcome to the dot-com boom. The parallels to the gold rush are unmistakable. You see the same frantic speculative energy, driven by a powerful fear of missing out. You see the same hyperinflation in the cost of living. A simple house in a town like Palo Alto now costs millions of dollars, the modern equivalent of a $3 egg in 1849. Now you see the pattern repeating itself again. Today, the buzzword is not the internet, but artificial intelligence. The same rush is on. Venture capitalists pour billions into startups, hoping to strike it rich. Fortunes are made overnight. It follows the same boom-bust template. A winner-take-all economy where a few early founders and investors achieve unimaginable wealth, while the broader social and economic consequences unfold in unpredictable ways. Through it all, the fundamental pattern remains. In the end, the California gold rush never really stopped. It simply changed what it was digging for. The story of those ordinary people, their hopes, their suffering, and the world they accidentally created continues to echo all around us. It is a quiet, persistent reminder of the enduring human search for a better life, and the often terrible price of finding it.